This podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to provide medical advice. It exists only to entertain. An intrepid public health official enters into a kitchen in 1906, New York City, to ask a few questions of the cook of a wealthy family. Oh, hello there. Hi, I'm looking to speak with the cook.
Oh, that's me. What's this about?
Are you? You are the cook then? Oh, are there others around who handle the food?
Who are you exactly?
I'm George, an inspector with the Public Health Authority here in New York City, and we're investigating an outbreak of typhoid.
Oh, and I suppose you think I've got something to do with it. Do you suppose I'm seasoning the food with typhoid fresh from the garden?
No, not exactly. But you are the cook then.
I'm Mary. I'll have you know I don't appreciate interlopers in my kitchen.
Okay, you could have just said you were the cook. I feel like we got off on the wrong foot here.
Whichever foot you choose. I'll have to work, so will you excuse me?
Yeah, it's just that...
Just what?
Well, I've checked into your record, Mary, and there seems to be a lot of people getting sick wherever you're working. I mean, you've been through several jobs and everyone seems to get typhoid. We're just trying to figure out...
You think I'm poisoning people with typhoid, don't you?
What? No. Well, maybe, but not intentionally. We do have a theory.
Well, I'm sure you do, but I'm no mind to hear about it. These things you're accusing me of.
Look, I'm just trying to do my job as a scientist and an agent of the public good. I really just want to know why people are getting sick with typhoid. I don't want anyone else to become ill, and I think we can explain how a hardworking, absolutely well-meaning person such as yourself may be unknowingly able to give typhoid to people. If we're right, your help could save so many people. I just ask you to listen to reason, please. I won't inconvenience you in the slightest.
I'm really busy right now, but perhaps if you really think it may be of help, well, I'll consider it. I'm not doing anything weird, though.
Thank you. No, nothing weird.
All right, then. What's next?
Great. May I have some of your urine and feces, please?
Get the out of here.
Throughout history, it's just Max and Mary, Mike and me. You gotta listen, you don't have to read. For historian.
Welcome, everyone. This is Poor Historians, a podcast delving into the archives of medical history. As three emergency physicians, we will explore the unusual ailments, treatments, physicians, and all related material having to do with the healing arts. I'm Max, and I'm joined here by my good friends and colleagues, Aaron and Mike. Gentlemen, did you guys see Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay at Forbidden Door this past weekend? It was insane.
What is that you're talking about?
It's like one of the best wrestling matches in the last 10 years.
Oh.
Was it on TV, or did you see it in person?
It was pay-per-view. It was
on Kenny Omega. Did he stay till the end, or was he finished?
It was no. Anyway, I really need you guys to watch more wrestling. It would really help everything out. Anywho,
I feel like there's a lot of
this
resistance
weekend
against us in wrestling.
all right.
Isn't Omega the Greek symbol for ohms? And that's a measurement
Yes.
of resistance? You guys didn't get the joke.
No, I didn't.
Oh.
But when you explained it, it was better.
Yeah, it's always
All
funny
right.
when you do that.
Well, with that, before we get to the show, we'll take a few moments to thank our sponsor, Artery Inc. How many more do I have to bleep? Advertisement.
3.
This episode is brought to you by Artery Inc., an anatomy-inspired apparel company here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Not only do they have numerous shirts and clothing items emblazoned with rad anatomical art, but they have other items too, like the Show Me Your Guts coloring book for adults. I mean, think about how relaxing it would be to pull up some crayons or colored pencils, maybe sit with a glass of scotch and color in decorative prints of the heart, lungs, digestive tract. I mean, it sounds like a good time to me, but I admit I'm a little bit different in like a cool, unique way, though. So if you want to check out that book or see their other items, please go to www.arteryinc.com. That's INK, and use promo code LISTEN2PHP at checkout to receive 10% off any order over $35, excluding the subscription boxes, though. And this will show your support for the show, as well as for the rad artistic talent they have there. Let's get back with the show. All right, and we are back for the new segment, previously called Mike's Mailbag. I feel like that's pretty vague. So let's go with Mike's Trivia Challenge, because this is where we have our listeners send us a trivia question that we're going to ask Mike on the spot. And if he does not know the answer, we reward that listener with their own medical eponym. The exception being this show, because we didn't get a submission, so I don't have a question for you, Mike. Do you have a medical trivia fact you just want to give our audience that's totally accurate off the top of your head?
Can I just do it like Jeopardy, like give you the answer and have it be wrong and then have you assign it to some other thing?
Sure, go for it.
Necrobiosis lipoidicum diabeticorum.
Somebody had that on their calendar today, didn't they? Like
I
medical terminology of the day. I know.
Remember?
I did.
Remember
like,
the kids were shooting off fireworks and
something.
somebody said, say a spell. And I said that word. It's a condition.
Can you say that word again?
Necrobiosis lipoidicum diabeticorum. It's my favorite diagnosis.
Okay. What is that diagnosis?
It's just like lumps on diabetic shins.
It's a lot of words for.
Yeah, I have. I think I told you that I have a book of differential diagnoses I got before I started medical school, and I would just page through it, and I can't unsee some of the words now. That's one of them that stuck with me.
That's your light reading.
Yeah, I don't like to read.
I like to read about differentials coldly.
It was just a thing, Max. It was just a thing.
Okay. No. Oh, all right. Well, so for next show, we'd love to see a question come across. So if you have one or you want to try to stump Mike, please go to our website, send the question through there, or you can send it to us on social media through any of our messaging systems there, or go straight to our email, poorhistorianspod@gmail.com, and we will try to surprise Mike with it on the next show. So I suppose let's just get to the main segment. Mike,
all right.
You researched something. Regale us.
I did. You could see that I have less than a page, and whatever's in paragraph form, it was just.
I'll just double space it, and it's
it was
probably
copied
at
and
least
pasted from
a page and a half.
The interweb. No. So yeah. So I'm going to start backwards with the agent, and then tell the really sad tale of Mary Mallon, otherwise known as Typhoid Mary.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
So yeah, she was accused of murdering threes of people over the course of 30 years.
Big difference there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be interesting debate. Some similarities with kind of what happened to a public health response with other outbreaks over the course of the last 30 years.
I feel like murder is a strong word there too.
Yeah, no, it's not murder.
Okay.
It's not first degree murder.
Are you accusing her of murder?
It was a little murdery. Not gonna lie. We'll get into it.
Okay.
Anyway, so she was. So they called her Typhoid Mary, and there's a substrain of Salmonella called Salmonella typhi that can cause this bloodborne illness that gets really bad, and that's what you could die from. Most of us that get Salmonella would never die. We just get like food poisoning, essentially. Just get diarrhea.
Sometimes bloody, right? Isn't that one of the?
It can be.
Yeah. Can't it?
But that's so
like diarrhea, high fever.
Let's start at the cellular level, Max, and then we'll get up to that.
All right, fine.
So everybody's going to love this part. It's a gram-negative rod.
What does that mean?
What is that?
It's just they put stain on bacteria. It's either gram-positive or negative. The rods or spheres or spirochetes.
You're giving us the morphology of the bacteria.
So they're named after how they're shaped, basically, in the microscope. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, their color and their shape.
They look like little rods.
Mm-hmm.
They look like little Good and Plenty's.
Little pink rods. Yeah.
That's a good way to put it, actually. And because they do stain positively, isn't that negatively? Sorry, that makes them purple, right? So
it's either purple or pink.
Yeah, purple Good and Plenty's, which is one of my favorite candies, by the way. It was awesome until my wife started enjoying them too, because that was the one candy I could keep around and nobody would touch.
Most people don't touch Good and Plenty's, Max.
Really? I don't know. Man, I can't stop.
You have to like the black licorice, which, and that's not a lot of people. I'll do all three of us like black licorice.
I do.
Yeah, I think we do. We found this out on an earlier show.
Wow.
Let's just talk about that for an hour.
Well, I ate so much once that my shit's turned green.
Another bleep. You're welcome.
Oh, but it can cause really bad renal issues.
It can.
Yeah. Which is funny because it's,
right?
Well, from the anus.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Why it doesn't cause hemorrhoids, I don't get it.
Did Typhoid Mary cause renal issues?
Anus? Well, ultimately, we're getting ahead of ourselves again.
Back on track.
So there's two main subtypes. There's Salmonella enterica and Salmonella bonjouri. It's the kind that you can only get in Italy.
That can't be true.
It's not. So it's named after this guy, this vet. So he was a veterinary pathologist who ultimately isolated because they were working on like figuring out why hogs kept having diarrhea. So this Daniel Elmer.
I mean, have you seen what they eat though?
Salmon. Hogs? They eat hog food.
Yeah, they eat anything.
So it's ultimately because I think he had died before they named it Salmonella. They had some other name that I don't remember what it was, which may be important for a podcast where you want to learn about these things. But anyway, it's called Salmonella after Daniel Elmer Salmon. Maybe it should be Salmonella.
Salmon? Should it be Daniel Elmer Salmon?
I don't know. Like what would you say if like there was a fish swimming upstream and jumping? What would you call that?
A salmon.
Salmon.
Yeah.
It's not a salmon.
Smoked salmon. All right. So it's an intracellular.
So it's named after the fish?
No.
Or the guy is named after
guy's
the
named
fish.
after the fish.
The fish.
The disease is named after the guy. So I think it goes fish first, man second, bacteria third.
Okay. All right. That's important. That's an important part of the story.
So it's an intracellular pathogen. So it exists within cells. So it gets it hard to treat, and it can. We now know, and I think in part because of Typhoid Mary and people like her, but you can be an asymptomatic carrier, and it could just live in your cells and infect people while not infecting the host. But that's how it causes issues. It's not toxin based, but it's all. I think the bacteria itself can disrupt intracellular respiration and ATP issues.
So scientifically, I'm going to translate that to the bacteria goes into the cells of your body. I think your enterics or your intestinal system, and
any system.
It screws stuff up, medically speaking, and then that makes your cells sad, and then they start like falling apart, and you start.
They can't do the things they normally do. They just don't feel right.
Yeah. It's just not cool. But you can get in your spleen and get into your gall bag.
Well, that's okay. Nobody knows what the spleen is for anyway.
Yeah.
So
in medical school, we there's something called an accessory spleen, where like I think 10% of the population has this like additional little spleen nub that can be found in the intestinal system, or like kind of in the vasculature of the intestinal system. And one of my classmates always had this fascination. He wanted to be the first one to do an accessory spleen transplant because it would be the most useless thing ever.
That's a terrible idea.
He's not a surgeon, don't worry.
Yeah. Sounds like he might not have even finished school, did he?
Oh, he finished school. He's an interesting guy. Gosh. He would actually, if he's listening to this episode, I feel like we're going to get a lot of notes about your microbiology there, Mike.
Oh, I know. It's really pathetic. I was...
you kind of opened yourself up to, you confused half our audience and pissed off the other half, probably. Because they're like, you said it wrong. And the other half's like, what are you talking about?
Wait, what did I say wrong? What did I say wrong?
Oh, no, probably nothing. But I don't know.
I think you were about to talk about salmonellosis.
Salmonellosis. Salmonellosis. So it's the gut infection. So that's what we know of salmonella. Like if you get it, it's water foodborne. So if you eat something that has salmonella in it and you get diarrhea, you get salmonellosis. So it's usually a self-limiting thing, like, 3 to 10 days of diarrhea, typically not going to be bloody. It's going to be something that it's like at most an irritation. In the developed world, it's like not a big deal. Tons of people it's way underdiagnosed because people wouldn't even go to the hospital or to their physician for some of the symptoms that you get from it. It gets bad when you get outbreaks or you get immunocompromised people or in the developing world. That's when it becomes an issue. So you can get typhoid fever, which is going to be essentially sepsis from salmonella. So it goes from the gut into the bloodstream. And so here's where it can secrete the toxins. And that's how you get hypovolemia. So again, you get low
Meaning,
volume, so you're going to poop out a lot of your fluids. You're going to have these endotoxins that your immune system's going to fight, so they're going to release these things called cytokines, and that's going to cause vascular redistribution of your blood. So you're going to lose volume and blood pressure, and that's when you get septic, and septic is just like an overwhelming infection.
Like, that's a good
Shocking.
description. I'm just trying to wonder if we need to talk about
here.
that.
I'll interpret for you. So you have your regular, salmonellosis. So you get your diarrhea. Maybe you're a little bit mildly inconvenienced. You're not all that sick. But then if it progresses to typhoid fever, you get that you get all that unpleasantness. Plus, not only are the cells that the salmonella are infecting and inside of, they're still sad, but now your immune system is like super mad about those cells being sad. And so the salmonella is getting out of control. It's releasing its own toxins. Your immune system's reacting to those in that response, and the immune system's substances like cytokines are causing your blood pressure to then be sad, because then your blood pressure is dropping.
All you did,
and then
it was the same description, but you said sad and happy.
I interpreted. So basically, typhoid fever is much more serious. Is I think the important point here, right?
Yeah. Sometimes
do you know how I got this diarrhea?
That was Heath Ledger's
Salmonella.
Joker.
I know.
By the way,
I was there.
That was pretty good.
Joker. All right,
pretty good. I was trying to remember which joke that was, though.
What? My God.
Anyway, go ahead. I don't want to get you off track. You go ahead.
They first visualized salmonella in 1880 using a microscope, and a microscope makes your vision happy because it makes it big. Big, happy vision.
You just don't say stuff like vasculature and cytokine storm, and you'll be fine.
I said vascular redistribution, and
I was
distributive shock.
To
just avoid those things. You'll be fine.
So they found him in the spleen, Max. They found him in the spleen. In the spleen. That's where he found it. In the spleen. He went in the spleen. He's like, "Hey, look at all this stuff. I got them all in the spleen."
Wait, who did that? That was
so Carl Eberth, because we love the names on the show. So Carl Eberth. It's still not ebertherosis, because they were paying homage to Daniel Salmon,
the fish guy.
The fish guy. So 4 years later, and I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I will.
This name is it Georg? Would you say George? There's no E.
Georg.
It'd be Georg Theodor Gafke. George.
Isn't it Georg, Gafke? Like in The Sound of Music? His name is Georg. That's how they say it.
So that guy did what?
He was able to grow salmonella in a culture.
Ah, gotcha. So he takes the bacteria,
it's just a sentence,
lets it grow in a
Yep.
he gets it into the petri dish, and he's like, "Oh, here, I found this bacteria with its own qualities, salmonella."
So like I was saying before, the diarrheal illness is not that big of a deal. There's still a fairly high mortality rate globally. It's about 10%. But the issue is that 60 to 80% of cases go undiagnosed. So you don't like that. It's not a 10% mortality rate. But if you have typhoid fever, you're unlikely to go unnoticed just because that's a more serious infection. So typhoid has a fatality rate of 25%. So there's 1.2 million cases of salmonella yearly in the US, but they think it's probably like in the 80, 90 million range potentially.
Oh, wow, really?
I don't know if that's math checks out. I'm really bad
really?
at math.
Wow.
No, I'm really bad at math. Oh, you're surprised about the other stat.
Well, I was just saying, I think the main, like the other thing about it is, you mentioned it, but like not only immunocompromised, but kids can get sicker from it. And so they may be more likely to be tested if they're having really bad symptoms, and, they get dehydrated and they're tiny humans, that's probably where you catch them. But as you said, since a lot of people may have it and not really realize it, unless there are clusters of people all having the same symptoms at like the same restaurant or whatnot, then there's a lot of cases we just don't know, because if we test everybody with diarrhea, we get a lot of negative tests.
But it's almost always in clusters, which is really interesting. And this is how they actually found out back in the late 1800s. Salmonella is almost always in a cluster. We'll see that in the news still, like salmonella was in sprouts or, spinach or something. But you never hear of like just marked numbers of deaths,
No, you hear, again.
It's essentially, it's like
susceptible, but-
warning people that are susceptible. Yeah, like don't eat spinach for 2 weeks, or anyway, it's unlikely to cause really bad, like significant mortality amongst people.
Well, and the other thing is nowadays we have treatment for it if we do catch it.
Yeah, but globally, so they're saying globally in 2000, this is the only, I guess, stat that I saw was that there were 21 million global cases of salmonella, and I think that's just regular salmonella, including typhoid fever. And there was 216,000 deaths. So that's about that 10% mortality rate, which I feel like is a fair amount. But
that seems kind of serious, though.
Well, again, it's developed and developing world. So, some
maybe
of these
minus
people,
all the resources and things.
Right. So, yeah, resource poor countries are going to, you could potentially die from diarrhea. You get dehydrated and then you're going to die.
And the treatment is the magic stop diarrhea immediately pill, right?
Yes, that everyone comes to the ER to look for.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you come in the first time you have the diarrhea, the very first one, then we give you the magic stop the diarrhea pill.
I think it's funny. I think more often than not,
you don't.
Like I have the conversation with people where they come in and like, can you give a stool sample? And they think that you don't believe them. Like, I want to see your poop because I don't believe
you're
you
a
actually
liar.
have diarrhea.
You're lying. I need to see it.
I could check it for this and other things.
But
usually, but then I'm always like, well, people always come at the tail end of the realness and you fought it hard at home, but then you had to come in because you got dehydrated. Now everything's fine. It's time for you to go home. Get out of here. Nobody invited you.
You do go through several accents with patient encounters, do you?
They feel so embarrassed. They're like, oh, I just came in for diarrhea.
It's super unsatisfying. They always look at me. I'm like, well, they're like, well, can you do something? I'm like, no.
You should just do a little dance, just like...
One of the better medicines is kind of over the counter, and even then it's sort of like it kind of works. But it's one of the most diarrhea is something you wait out.
Potassium, you usually get low in potassium.
I usually tell people to eat cornstarch because that'll thicken up their stool.
Not true. Does it?
No, God.
No. It's the opposite, isn't it?
This is not an advice podcast. You have to put it up your butt. You can't eat it.
Stop. No, I don't tell people that it's not an advice podcast. We can't say craziness. You know what pedantic thing I never ever correct when people tell me they have diarrhea?
Pedantic means that your vocabulary is sad.
That's not what it means.
No, it's the opposite. It means your vocabulary is actually quite happy. But anyway, talking about being pedantic, diarrhea means increased frequency of stooling. It doesn't mean loose stool, right? So
you could
I would be like, you don't have diarrhea.
You could have a couple pebbles that you
How many do you
every
have?
30 seconds. Yeah, now you have diarrhea, even though they're like hard, like pebbles. Like you could
like a
break
machine
windows.
Machine gun of pebbles. That's uncalled for.
No, we haven't even talked about the stool scale yet.
The Bristol scale?
No,
Aaron, we talked about that before.
Listener,
didn't
Google
we?
it. Google the Bristol stool scale.
No, but Aaron, I remember you at
system.
work one day. You drew out a thing and you drew pictures of poop. I still have that sheet somewhere. Oh, I just saw it recently when I was cleaning up my office, and I started cracking up. I couldn't.
I'm surprised you didn't frame
So
it.
anyway,
It was Aaron's stool scale.
do you ever poop a perfect 4 and just like admire it?
I don't know what the numbers mean.
There is a perfect.
It goes to
there's a
6,
perfect
doesn't
one.
it? I think it's Bristol
I think
1 through
it's-
6.
I think it's 1 to 7. I think. Oh, I
One to
gotta
Does
seven
it mean it's
now.
perfect?
They
It's like,
discovered a 7 now?
It might be a perfect 3. I forget.
It's like
Like
the
it's a
7
hot
is just
dog?
like a gaseous form. It sublimates.
does it mean there's no wrinkles on it? I don't understand how you rate these things.
Okay,
you won.
Mike.
Mhm.
Mike, I need you to come back.
What do you mean? You guys are, oh, God.
Don't listen to us.
Yeah, I think you
have
could
to, you have
blame
to stay on
me.
topic.
You're gaslighting me.
That's funny. 'Cause- yeah, 1 to 7. 7 is.
How
7
long
is
would you say
gravy.
salmonella has been around the human species there, Mike?
6,500 years on
Okay.
the nose.
And why is
We're
that?
getting ahead of ourselves. Oh, no, we're not.
think we're
Yes, no,
behind
because they
ourselves.
found salmonella DNA in 6,500-year-old human remains.
What?
And it's all Typhoid Mary's fault.
Yep. She's the one that did this to us.
Oh, yeah. This is a show about her.
Yeah. Because she was against us. She was against humanity.
Okay.
So Mary Mallon. Oh, now I can do it. She was born in 1869 in Cookstown, County,
Nice.
Tyrone. So
Nice.
Northern Ireland, she's Irish immigrant, came to the U.S. at age 15. She lived with family for a while, and then ultimately got a job as a cook. She cooked for wealthier families. I think just chatting, I think it was with you, Max, recently. Like, this is one of the better jobs to have.
I mean, in if you will, like in the
Like the
brutal
service
world
industry.
of being of the service class in early, or late 19th century United States, especially New York City, if you were a servant to a wealthier family, there's certainly a hierarchy there, and to be the cook was kind of a higher up on that hierarchy. I'm not saying it was probably great in every respect, but for instance, it'll come up later. Working in laundry and things like that was apparently awful and brutal. And this is somewhere around the time that you had other jobs like painting radium onto things, and then having the story of the radium girls, which we've done before. So if you were from this socioeconomic status, especially as an immigrant in the United States at that time, this was probably one of the better jobs you could get.
Yeah, so Mary was a cook. It seemed like she loved to cook. One thing she hated to do was wash her hands. But she
Is that true, or you
How do
just
we
made
know
that
this?
up?
No, it's
How do we know
absolutely
this?
true.
Is it?
Yep. We'll get into
Wow.
it.
Okay.
Not a big deal. But yeah, so she had done this over the
I think
course
it's
of
going to
7
be a
years.
big deal for this story then.
Well, so Mary Mallon, she worked for 8 different affluent families within the New York City area. And looking back now, it turns out that every single place she worked, someone got sick, and then she changed her name and then got a different job. Because she knew. That's why I think she might be a pseudo murderer.
I think it's a Mike theory. I don't know if that's borne out by
I don't
historical
know.
sources.
Yeah, from what I found.
Mhm.
So Mallon never showed any signs or symptoms of illness. But like I said, of the 7, so she get caught at the 8th family, but of the 7 previous families she worked for, at least one person in each family contracted. They call it typhoid fever, and it could have been that somebody got really sick with salmonella each time. So yeah, within weeks, it wouldn't even be like months or years. It'd be within a few weeks, somebody would get seriously ill with I guess they did say typhoid fever. So then in 1906, that's when they figured it out. So there were multiple ill people within this household. I think there were, including servants and all that, I think there were 11 in the house, and either 7 or 9 got sick all at the same time. There was a little girl that ultimately died from this infection.
Yeah.
Mary
More susceptible.
Yeah, so Mary just had started working for this family 3 weeks prior to this outbreak. So then there's this, the public health department was like looking into it. They couldn't figure it out. And this family that owned this house, I think they wanted to rent the house, and they thought it looked bad for like prospective renters to come through and see that people are getting sick at this house. So even though the New York Public Health Department was like, we don't see anything real suspicious here, they hired their own private person to come through. That he had been previously within New York's health department. Sounds like he was pretty good at his job, but his name was George Sopers.
Yeah, was he I can't remember. Was he a physician or was he just a scientist?
I think he's just a scientist. I didn't see any reference to him as a physician, but he worked for the city.
Okay.
New York City, but then he was hired privately by this family to figure out so he's the guy that uncovered Mary and who she was.
Gotcha.
So nobody had figured that out up until this point. They just thought what an unusual circumstance. It kind of got people's attention because typically these outbreaks were associated with lower socioeconomic status places and like unclean housing and things like that. And here's all these fancy places. A lot of these are like, these are the nicest houses in New York City. And
that's when it became a problem then.
Right.
Because before that, it was, it
was expected. And now it's like, we got to get this figured out.
Oh, wait a second. The wealthy class is susceptible. Now let's do something. So
Mary's initial interaction with Soper was okay. I mean, for the first like 36 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So
on the dot?
About that. They're talking. He's like, hey, you're Mary Mallon. She's like, oh, yeah, I'm Mary Mallon. It's a pleasure to meet you. What's your name, George? I've got some questions about some people getting sick. Oh, why don't you then? So she got really mad. Bleep that one out too. So he was suggesting, he's like, I know that you're at these other houses there were other people that had gotten sick, and he was really nice at the start. He's like, I really would love for you to come in. I want to do some testing. Once we get this thing figured out, you can go back to work. Because they were still trying to understand, even though it had been, 26 years, they really didn't have a great understanding of germ theory. So he's trying to work through it with her, and she sounds like she's a contrarian. She is your like a firebrand. She gets really ticked off, and then there's different reports of how he left the house, but she chased him out with something. I saw a rolling pin. Someone said, I think there was a newspaper article that said that she chased this George guy out with a meat cleaver. And then I know Max, you'd heard maybe a fork or something.
Yeah, I heard like meat fork. I my expertise in the subject extends to watching a documentary, which I'll link in the show notes. It was actually very good, and
a lot better than this. I should have watched it.
Well, no, I'm going to say that the documentary definitely took a interesting view and painted this George Soper guy as kind of I don't remember if he was a physician. I think some sort of other scientist, but
he's a PhD.
As like
he had a PhD.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
so
he teamed up with a Dr. Baker to.
Yeah. So, but it really painted him as he was this guy who, when there was a problem that was brought before him, he would just, so what's causing this illness, what's causing this outbreak? He was just very determined and like dogged, and would just not stop until he found the answer to the problem. And the way that they also sort of painted his personality is that, well, maybe he didn't have the most tact when he approached Mary about these things. And so she did not take a liking to him, in that they got off on the wrong foot.
I don't think it was because of him. Yeah, I don't think it was because of him. From what there was a I can link it too. There was just a 2-page article written about this back in the 90s about their interaction, and it truly was, at least the way that it was described contemporaneously. And again, this was like huge stories, right, in the newspaper and popular culture. But it sounded like he tried his best to like fix the problem with her help, and she absolutely was not having it.
In the way that they kind of handled that in the show, they said like the first meeting was like it didn't go well, but then later, yeah, he was like, I really need to have a different approach, and several other people. And it is interesting because she, on one level, certainly was, it's not her fault. She's an asymptomatic carrier in a time they didn't even really know that was a thing really until this story. And so she is making people sick. She doesn't have any way of really, can't control that. It's not really an established phenomenon yet. He comes to her and says, hey, I think this is what's going on. Their first interaction, plus or minus whether he had a tactful approach or not, becomes this battle between them. And then it becomes a point almost of stubbornness, where she's not going to listen to any public health official now because of the way that she ends up being treated, which if
Max,
you happen to...
You're getting ahead of ourselves.
I'm just trying to paint the story from the perspective of that documentary. That's all.
But so I think it started like he was trying to be kind. It didn't last long. It literally lasted seconds to minutes.
How many seconds? You said 36 seconds.
36
in the
seconds
first one.
for when she got ticked off. Yeah.
Okay. So from 36 seconds on.
So I honestly like it's on her. The beginning part of that interaction was bad. He's just saying like, I want to get this figured out. And she essentially physically threatens him and then runs out of the house. So then he's like, you know what? Forget it. I'm getting the police involved. So this is when you get the physician. Apparently there's a mobile crisis physician unit that goes out and apprehends diarrheal patients. That'd be a good sitcom. Yeah. Law and Order Diarrhea U. So they find she's out there running around for 3 hours. They find her and then they bring her in. And I don't know that they ever get, I think actually they did 4 samples from her. And then, so this Soper guy.
I just waited.
Yeah. Soper had determined at this point in her life, she'd infected 22 people. And then that one little girl had died from the infection. So, it's not like huge numbers, right? And I think they can reason with her and say like, you infected 22 people. And they ultimately, this is when they asked her about washing hands. And she said she didn't see a point to it because she wasn't sick. So like maybe if she was sick, she would have washed her hands. So he said,
should have induced a fever then.
Well, what they said when they knew that it could potentially lay dormant in the gallbladder, and they were right. So they said you can have your gallbladder out, or you can stop working as a cook. And then she refused both, and this made it to the paper rather than them doing something. I think.
I mean, I think I would definitely refuse surgery in that time too.
Yeah,
But,
no, I'm not saying.
I think changing your job is maybe
again them trying to tell you like, hey, you're part of this problem. You're this huge issue. You infected 22 people with whatever over the course of like, a fairly long amount of time already. And she still has no symptoms. She's like, you got the wrong girl. Like, it's not me, it's somebody else, so you can see where she's coming from too. And good for her for standing up to the man, I guess. But still, she was on the wrong side of history. But it could have been a non-story if she was like, oh, okay, I'll just stop working as a cook and I'll find some other job.
I don't think you know Irish women very well. My mom is one of them, and there's no way like that the depths of stubbornness and standing on principle are unmatched. It's actually stronger than the strong internuclear force.
Oh, geez.
You
we're
cannot
off
be
into
broken.
another corridor
It
of
cannot be
science.
broken.
Well, you think about, there's that Australian bushranger, Ned Kelly. I think his mom was like fairly heavy in that story, and she just like didn't want to back down to the government.
No, that's especially it's one of those things where there's probably somewhere in the story and where the truth is there's wrongs on both sides, and then it does get kind of blown really far out of proportion.
Yeah, like horrifically out of proportion.
I think we saw with COVID how people handle being the source of contagion, right? I mean, we all got really weird right away when we were like the source, and you hated to think that you passed it. But
there was different, like it's almost like we went into the Soper camp or the Mallon camp. Like the Mallon camp was like, we're not going to get people sick. This is ridiculous. Like, come on, this is an overreach. And then the Soper camp was like, we got to lock things down. And then the Mallons and the Sopers, it was like the Hatfields and the McCoys.
Is that the next TV show we're going to pitch?
Yes. And what do they have? Do you remember what they had? What made them so angry all the time?
I think they forgot, didn't they?
They think that one of the families had pheochromocytomas. So they were prone to fits of rage because of it. It's actually an interesting. Maybe we should.
Can you describe a pheochromocytoma
episode.
since you opened up that?
So it's your adrenal glands happy because it puts out so many hormones related to stress. That makes you angry.
You want me to try? You want me to try?
We'll do it later. We'll do it later.
Will we?
Yep, I promise.
Okay.
I'll do that one. So anyway, she refuses to get her gallbladder out. She refuses to stop working as a cook. Then ultimately was labeled a menace to society. So then they banished her. This is back when banishment was still a thing. So she got banished to the Riverside Hospital for Communicable Diseases. There's this island, near New York called North Brother Island. And she was sent there to live in solitude. And I don't know that there were many people living on this island at the time.
I mean, it sounds lovely, I'm sure, for island living, but
could you imagine? People would probably like love to do that right now. Like we're just bombarded by all this stuff. Like,
it's an island for all communicable diseases.
All of them.
So then, but
I feel like your neighbors, you don't want to hang out with them.
Each person only had one. So then, and they're all that sounds really mean.
Yeah.
I feel like
it was really
probably
mean.
a subject for this show too.
So she's there, and they're bringing supplies to her. And they were describing this like life of solitude, and she hates it. And she's got an attorney, so she keeps filing legal briefs like, "Get me off this island. This is ridiculous. I don't want to live here anymore." So after 3 years, a new health commissioner was elected, and the health commissioner felt bad for her, and they were like, "You know what? Let's bring her back to mainland." And again, it was like, "Mary, you can't cook. We'd suggest you have your gallbladder out, but if you won't do that, don't cook anymore." And she's like, "Okay." Apparently found a job doing laundry for 6 days, eludes authorities for 5 years. And then what did they find her doing? Cooking.
Yeah.
Cooking at a hospital.
Of course she did.
was cooking in a hospital. So
That's
she
amazing.
was working at Sloan Maternity Hospital in New York. So they found 25 new cases of typhoid fever. And my thought was like, Mary, keep your ear to the ground. If you hear about people getting typhoid, just get out. Go somewhere else.
fair.
Like, run.
That's fair.
Anyway, so they sent her back
Why'd
to
she stay
North.
around New York? She should have gone like away.
I know, but then,
Another
who
place
knows?
altogether.
Like maybe she didn't have money to travel. I don't know how you would get like from place to place. That's what makes me think she knew. Not that she wanted to get people sick, but I think she knew. Like, I think they're onto
They might be
something.
right,
Yeah.
or yeah. Well, and what about if she comes to that realization, the guilt? She's like, oh man, they might be right. That's probably hard to come to terms with.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, especially with the deaths.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would weigh on me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe try to tell doctors they've been doing something wrong.
Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah,
because it's the
Aaron,
same
you'd know better than
phenomenon.
anybody.
Because then you're like, wait, I was doing it wrong, and then you think of all the times you did it that way, and you're like, oh man.
And we're also contrarians. You get somebody like, let's say, in urgent care sends you a patient. They're like, you need to do this. What's the test that you're not going to do? It's the one that they told you to do.
Provided it was not really indicated.
That would be really hard if you knew you got all these people sick. But why would she go to a mother and daughter
I don't know,
maternity ward?
I don't know.
Oh,
yeah, I know.
That's a vulnerable population. So did anyone tally up like how many people she maybe got sick at the end of the day?
So total 51 people, 3 died. So in the other thing too with Typhoid Mary, and I remember reading
Less
this
than I would expect
a couple months ago. I was like, yeah, how is this a public menace? Yeah, how did she like withstand history and time? Like big deal when you think about it over the course of history.
Troublesome woman, maybe.
Yeah, I think the story is interesting, but it gets even worse for her. So this is where like she might have been not the bad guy, but like the inconsiderate guy at the time. She turns into like an absolute victim at the end of her life, which stinks. So they find these new 25 cases and they're like, you know what, Mary, you had your chance. You can't do this anymore. So then they banished her back to North Brother Island and she spent the rest of her life there. It was another 26 years of forced isolation. 26 years. And she ultimately, it's hard to say what she died from. It sounds like she might have had a major stroke on the island and then died. But at the time that she died, New York health officials had identified 400 other healthy carriers. And 1, they didn't release Mary. And 2, they didn't incarcerate any of those people. Isn't that crazy?
Well, that seems bad.
Right? That's why I'm saying, like, I almost feel like they put her out there and then she got forgotten.
Well, I mean, she was kind of, it sounds like the scapegoat for a lot of this, she was drug through the media, right? So all the newspapers basically made, I think that's where the Typhoid Mary came from, if I remember correctly.
It did. Yeah, the papers named her that.
Yeah, so now she is just sort of enemy number 1 to the public health, to the good of society.
But some sided with her. Some were like, I feel bad for her. She shouldn't be treated this way. This is not right. 400
other people with a similar condition, you should at least be a little bit more equitable. I mean, I think my take from the story was, like, Mary, we got to really find you a different job. Because I don't believe, actually, in her defense, I don't know that taking out her gallbladder cures this. Like, I don't think that's a guarantee.
No,
so
I mean, if it is
refusing 19 like teen surgery is like that's usually probably a good fall.
Well, maybe they knew it was high risk for this to be fatal.
Oh, sure. But, I mean, I think the story ends better if they were able to find her a different profession. But then again, I guess counterpoint is it probably wasn't super easy to get into another profession. I mean, she did do the laundry thing for like a week, but it was brutal work.
Yeah.
She was good at being a cook. And so
we don't know
I can kind of see that. Like that's,
we don't
know that she was good at being a cook.
The documentary said she was actually a very good cook.
Like her food tasted good or was healthy?
Yes.
Because you can't do
She was hired by a lot of wealthy families. So, you don't, if you're really bad at it, I don't think you keep getting those jobs.
She probably kept feeding them like broth while they were sick.
Well, I'm sure she did.
No, you're not feeling well. Here's some broth.
One thing, when the families did get sick, she stuck around and nursed them all back to health. Like she didn't just cut and run. So that, I guess that's one of each of these families they had mentioned. I think that's why, like, they should have been kinder to her. Like she stuck around when she didn't have to. She could have just ran. And then once she was found, like, I don't know that she stuck around and took care of babies in this hospital. With,
I mean,
a
you would have
new
needed
outbreak.
her to accept germ theory, which at the time
Right.
was not easy, and she
Mhm.
wasn't a scientist. So this is like a new thing. All the some scientists believe, not even all the scientists,
Right.
and accept
yeah.
sanitary methods.
If somebody was like, Mary, wash your hands and you'll be fine, and then she reads a paper from the time, it's like, don't wash your hands, it doesn't do anything. She'd be like, well,
think-
why would I do that? It says
I think we've proven that there's a difficulty, getting people to agree with health information. So, right?
And the delivery's
We're
bad
not
too.
doing any
Just
better
think,
now.
what if George Soper was a better communicator? And he's like, hey, listen, this is what we know. We don't know a lot more. We think this is going to help. Would you please work with us?
How did she get? But then she just the rest of her life on an island. That seems really.
I know that. I mean, honestly, like it makes me sad for this lady. Like her
Yeah.
life was just like taken away from her because she gave people a Hershey squirts.
It's human condition. It's complicated. What can you say?
It's just it could have gone better at so many different turns of the story.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those things that gets repeated over and over again in human history,
But
especially medical history,
the
right?
thing that really gets me is that all these other people that at the time that she died, they knew that other people could carry this, and they did nothing with them. That's why I think they forgot, like when she died and they saw the paper, that Soper guy was like, oh,
Or
she's still on the island. Oh man, we were supposed to release
or
her
they were
26
kind
years
of
ago.
punishing her for the way that she that she wasn't listening to them, etc. And maybe it was vindictive.
Well, there were like harsh punishments for other minor crimes back then, so maybe this is like, yeah, whatever,
Sure. Maybe it might have been it. So I guess if you're approached by a public health official, don't threaten them with a cleaver.
Yeah, think about some of these. I mean, this goes along with some of the COVID stories. I remember hearing stories about people in Melbourne, like people saying that you can't leave your apartment complex, and there were going to be revolts. Like you can't do that to us,
Well, this is one of those intersections where you have to weigh the public health versus the personal freedom thing, and that's a complicated argument in every case, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
this is kind of the outline. This is a simplification of that. It's one person, one disease state. Lock up, save some lives, ruin one. So when you think about it, like she was a life that was ruined by her condition as well, but by the government, not by the illness.
Well, right.
So it's probably there are 4 victims, not 3.
Well, I want to commend you on one thing, Mike. You wrote a essay about diarrhea, and you made it actually sad in commentary on the human condition and complicated story that affected this poor woman for the rest of her life, and you turned diarrhea into a bummer, and I'm proud of you because it.
Normally it's so much fun. What do you think?
Yeah, I know. I love diarrhea. I think it's great, and I like.
No.
Yeah, I'm glad we got through it without any fart or diarrhea sounds.
It's well done. Well.
He's going to mix them back in later.
I think we can leave it there. So we appreciate everyone listening, and we'd love to hear from all of you out there. If you'd like to check out our merchandise or provide feedback, we can be reached through our website, www.poorhistorianspod.com. There you can send us messages and find links to our social media sites. We do work to respond to all those posts on our various social media accounts. If you want to participate in the show, use our site to send us a medical history trivia question to test Mike's innate knowledge and try to win your own medical eponym. And he's really bad at them, so you probably will win. I think you're 0-5 or something like that?
5, yeah. I'm going to get one of these.
And someday, by probability. If you do have time, please go and leave us a nice 5-star review on iTunes or whichever platform you choose to listen to us on. And if you don't feel like doing that, just tell some people about the show. Grab their phone, make sure to subscribe them against their will, and they'll probably enjoy it as much as you do. And if you're old-fashioned, write us a message, without the help of an AI supercomputer. Let's just see how long that skill takes to fade away from humanity, huh? Until next time, the Poor Historians are signing out. AMA. Okay, for the opening skit, who wants to be what?
What do we have?
We have an inspector, And then we have the cook, who is Typhoid Mary, which will need an Irish female accent.
Well, it's Aaron.
What?
Yeah,
Oh,
always.
man.
Oh, well, all right,
I don't
fine, I'll
know
do
if
it.
I can do that.
Okay, I'll do it.
I'm not
Oh,
sure.
God. Okay.
I'm not sure at all
I'll
if I
do
can
it.
pull that off.
You get to cuss at the end of it too, Mike. Does that make it?
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Wait,
I'll
so
bleep it,
who's doing it? Or am I doing the whole episode this way? Sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh.
That's definitely not Irish. All right, Mike, you
No, I
are.
know it's not.
Typhoid Mary.
You know what? I didn't warm up. I just, I haven't done this in a while.
All right, no, I'll be the inspector.
Okay, you go ahead.
And I suppose you think I've got something to do with it. God, I'm sorry. All right. I'm Mary, and I'll have you know I don't appreciate interlopers in my kitchen. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Mary, and I'll have you know I don't appreciate interlopers in my kitchen. I think it's the sentence. Wait.
Give me another good one of those.
Get.
This is your line. This is
know.
where you get to say the F word.
Oh, get the. I can't. God, I'm
Get the
sucking this.
out of here.
Get the
Something like
Get the out of here.
that. Right. Okay.
Yes.
You just want to make me bleep more things.
Sweet poetry.
Ah.